In this lesson, we will create bone objects that will deform the eyelids. Again, we can save time by working with bone objects that we have already built. Let's go ahead and grab the chain for our left eye. And with that selected, we're going to clone it. So after pressing Ctrl V, we'll make sure to copy and choose OK. Now let's grab our rotate gizmo. We'll make sure that our pivot mode is set to pivot center. Since we have multiple objects selected, it might be set to selection center, but to make sure it's set to this first choice in our pivot menu. Alright, great. So now we can go ahead and rotate the chain up. You can see how it also tilts the nub up as well, but no worries. We could always recreate that easily. I'm just concerned with the root here. That looks pretty good. But you can see by looking at the eye in the front view that it needs to be rotated over in the z-axis a bit more so it's centered to the eyelid. That way, as we start to deform the eyelids, we get some really nice and natural looking deformations. The bone object doesn't favor one half. Instead, it's right there nice and centered. So let's go ahead and rotate this over in our z-axis. That looks nice. I'll now go ahead and take the nub object, delete it. Let's grab our bone tools. We'll select our root and choose Create End. Great, so there's one bone object for the upper lid. Now for the lower lid, here's what we can do. We could basically clone the upper lid. Alright, so again, we'll go in, grab that bone object, press Ctrl V as a copy, which is OK, and we'll go ahead and rotate it down. And see that I've done so without the nub, because we could always create it easily using Create End. But here's what we're going to do next. Let's go ahead and switch our rotate coordinate system to local mode. In order to make sure we get this mirrored type of effect as we rotate the same axis when we have both roots selected, what we can do is flip this bone object here around 180 degrees. So we do that in our x-axis, or the twist axis. So let's go ahead and press the A key to turn on angle snap, and we'll start to just rotate, and we'll take a look at our rotate value from the top. So I'm rotating until I see a value of 180 degrees. There we go. So now, watch this. With both bone objects selected, if we were to try to rotate in the z-axis, you can see we get this mirrored effect. Fun. So what that means is, if we would like to close the eyes at any point, we can basically use the same values we would use on one bone to affect the lower half the same way. Alright, let's go ahead and grab our new root here for the lower lid and choose Create End. Alright, so now that we have a nub object, we can go ahead and rename these objects. We can get them mirrored across. We can clean them up by having our mirrored bones stored in our skeleton layer, but one step at a time. So how about a naming convention? Well, for the upper lid, we can go ahead and work with BNL upper lid 01. I'll go ahead and copy that and rename the nub. So that's BE. So we get the idea. When we get to the lower lid, the name is going to be drastically different. Not quite. It's going to be BNL lower lid 01. And I'll just go ahead and copy that, grab the nub, and then paste that in, and change the N to an E for BEL lower lid. Alright, sweet. Now to mirror this across, remember, since these bone objects are already linked, if we were to select both roots and press page up, you can see it's already linked to the head bone, simply because we've cloned from an object that was already linked to that same parent. Alright, so what we can do, just to make sure that we mirror this over without any issues of our head bone pulling away, as we've already seen, we'll go ahead and grab both roots, and we're going to go ahead and unlink them temporarily. Alright, so once we have done that, take a look at what happens here. You can see how the head bone here kind of separates from its nub. If that ever happens, no worries. What I like to do is just go ahead and remove the nub object and basically recreate it. Now here, you can see that, hey, what's up with the head bone? How come it's not allowing us to create a nub? So that's what happens when we go ahead and unlink in times. You can see that we have this kind of issue here where we aren't able to use create end. The bone isn't acting like a normal bone object should. So to get around that, what I like to do is basically go in and just kind of recreate the bone. We'll go ahead and choose copy, and then we can choose create end afterwards. Alright, so once we've managed to recreate that bone object, we can go ahead and take the old bone object, highlight that, and delete it. So we're left with the same type of bone object. What this also means is that we might have to go ahead and relink our bones, but no worries. We at least have got around that little gap issue we saw. Let's go ahead and turn on bone edit mode and bring the snub up a bit more. Alright, great. So we'll go ahead and make sure everything is linked back and stored in our skeleton layer, things like that. But first things first, let's go ahead and take care of the right half of our eyelids. Okay, so we've already unlinked them. Let's go ahead and grab both bone objects. We'll press Control page down to grab the entire chain. We'll now click on mirror to mirror those across. We'll click OK. And now we'll look for our x-axis values. So they should be the same because the pivot point should be right there on top of the eye bone. It's just the rotation that we've changed. So let's go ahead and copy that x value. Go ahead and copy that. And we'll use that for both bone objects here. With them both selected, that's going to be negative, and then we'll paste, hit enter, and now they have been mirrored. Alright, sweet. So from there, we can go ahead and select all 4 roots, and we can have them linked back to our head bone. Great. So once we've done that, we can now go ahead and just kind of check our naming. And I won't go through that for this lesson because it's really straightforward. We just go ahead and change that L to an R, and we remove the suffix mirrored. So I'll leave that up to you. But more importantly, we'd want to go through and make sure that our bone objects are linked to our new head bone. Great. And now to freeze transforms, we'd basically grab the neck, press Control page down, and run our freeze transform tool. Alright, so you can see that the jaw, it also needs to be linked back to our head bone. Now when we press Control page down, everything is highlighted. We can now right click and choose freeze transform, click yes. Wonderful. Alright, so at this point, you'd probably want to just go through and again rename your objects. You can see with this new head bone, it would need to be renamed. We'll get rid of that 02 we see and change that to a 1. So that's BN head 01. For the nub, I'll just go ahead and copy the name of the head bone, paste, and change that BN to a BE. And then we know we also need to rename the bone objects that we've just mirrored. And that's going to finish this lesson. So in the next lesson, let's say we go ahead and move over to the nostrils and add bone objects to deform them.